President Garcia, thank you so much for joining us on America's Now.
Well, very pleased to be here, enjoying this conference.
You have been head of the CAF Bank for 25 years now. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the region since you arrived?
Well, let me tell you, a very interesting period. I started in 1991. I was elected there, 5-year periods, and then re-elected, and now will be 25 years. And in that period, many things have changed in Latin America, in the world, and in CAF. And let me tell you that at that time, we were going out of the so-called lost decade in Latin America, because in the early 80s, we had a very hectic situation in Latin America. We had a hyperinflation, the debt crisis, and it forced Latin America to adjust itself and to have a recession with unemployment and so forth. So the 90s was a renaissance, let's say, and we started in the region to move with more optimism to try to restore growth and to make changes in the way the economy worked. And in that context, I became president of CAF, and I thought that CAF had a great potential because it was created with very innovative approach that was taken by those who wrote the basic bylaws of the institution. And it was a small institution. It was 5 countries. It was Andean, from the Andean community. And the level of operations was about approvals of about $400 million. So what we did is to try to project a different model of institution. In the sense, the traditional multilaterals, like the World Bank, the IDB, the African Development, they have 2 types of members: donor countries and recipient countries. And donor countries are industrialized countries, basically the United States, Japan, UK, so forth. They put money, but they don't receive the benefits of the loans and the technical cooperation. And the developing countries put some money too, but they are the ones who receive the support. Well, I didn't want to repeat that. So let's try to have an institution that is owned by emerging countries.
So you talk about emerging countries, the Latin American countries. Do you think that's what makes your bank so special, the relationships in the region? What really sets it apart from the IDB, from the IMF?
Well, I tell you, the type of ownership makes the difference. And we are, in fact, that's very interesting. We are the only regional multilateral in the world that has that model. And the difference is very simple, because everybody is committed to the institution. We are the banker who brings the umbrella when it's raining, because in sunny days, you do not need an umbrella. What do I mean by that? We have never stopped supporting countries in difficult times. By the same token, no country has been, not paying their dues, capital increases. There is a sense of ownership, of commitment. Another thing is very interesting. There is no political interference, because we're very independent. We respect different ideologies. We don't interfere with the governments in terms of how they want it. Some are very market-oriented, others are state-oriented. We respect the differences. The only thing we request is that the initiatives that we are going to support are well done. They have good feasibility studies. They take into account technical, economic, financial, environmental issues, social issues, and there is transparency. And that's it. And it makes the difference. And other thing that is very crucial, we don't have a resident board. In the World Bank, in the IDB, in the African, you have a board of staff members of the ministers of finance in Manila or in Washington or in Brazil or in Bolivia, whatever. And they are in the board, and it's a board, permanent board. They live in headquarters. So in our case, we don't have that. The board is composed by the ministers of finance of the countries, which means they meet 3 times a year. But they have a high capacity of decision. In other words, for instance, a capital increment, in 2 meetings you can decide. By the same token, they don't intervene in the day-to-day work. So the level of delegation to management is very high.
You did mention tough times. You have several countries that are doing very well economically. They're very stable. But then we have other countries like Brazil and Venezuela that are having some tough moments right now.
I agree with you. And precisely as we did in the past. We did that with Peru. We did that with Bolivia. We did that with Ecuador, with all countries. We bring the umbrella. We continue supporting Venezuela. We could support Brazil. And we hope that we'll help them, not only through financial resources, but also supporting them with ideas in trying to solve some of the issues that are facing them today. And so that's the very important thing. And countries appreciate that very much. I'll give you an example. In capital payments, you know, the subscription of capital, Venezuela pays in advance. We have never had, in the 46 of life of CAF, one country having a default. Never.
You also do a lot of development projects, a lot of infrastructure support. Between 2010 and 2015, you've approved more than $50 billion in development projects. Can you talk to us about some of those projects and how they're doing right now?
Oh, of course, yes. I tell you, of that amount, the main sectors of support have been precisely infrastructure, both economic and social infrastructure. We have roads and energy, we have water, sewage, education, so forth. And we are doing, in fact, we are, right now, we are number one in supporting infrastructure in Latin America compared to the World Bank Group and the IDB. And one thing that we do is to be sure that the social sectors and the environmental issues are taken care of. So we are not only satisfied with financing the project, in approving a loan or a grant, we continue to supervise and follow up and see whether the implementation is taking place in a reasonable manner.
Is that how you make sure that some of these funds with these projects, I mean, we're talking about a lot of money here, don't get into the wrong hands? There's a lot of concern about corruption and transparency.
No. Precisely. That's one of the central issues. We are very, very careful in evaluating that. And toleration, we don't tolerate that. Fortunately enough, I cross my fingers, so far in the last few years, we didn't have a case in which there was a scandal of a difficult situation. We approve loans and we apply procurement policies that are very strict. International bidding, we have committees that supervise that. And of course, corruption is one of the issues, central issues in the world. And we have to strengthen all the mechanisms to avoid that. And part of the political problems that you see in many of the countries are the result of that fact.
We've been talking about some of the other development banks. What do you think of the new Chinese-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank? Do you consider it competition?
No. On the contrary, I have good news for you. You know, we have established a very good relationship with the new bank, the BRICS Bank, to start with. In fact, we had long meetings with President and staff last week during a conference we had in Washington. We signed an MOU of cooperation. We intend to cooperate. And I hope to do something similar with the new infrastructure bank, because there is so many requirements, so many things, so many needs in the countries that you don't should look at the other banks as competition. On the contrary, we should supplement ourselves. That's the way we try to work, even, for instance, with the World Bank, with the IFC, with the Inter-American Development Bank. And these new institutions are very, very good. And at the national level, we have a very good relationship with development banks, like, for instance, the BNDES in Brazil, similar ones in Latin America, and also a chain of development and commercial banks. Through them, we channel resources in lines of credit so they can deliver them to small and medium-sized enterprises. And one thing that we are emphasizing very, very much is the development of microfinance, microeconomic actions that are so crucial to improve the quality of life of people.
What is your assessment of the region right now economically? And where do you see the future of your bank?
Well, let me tell you, I think we have had a very successful early part of this millennium. thanks to two things. The first one is that we learn from the lessons from the errors, mistakes we did in the 80s in macroeconomic management. So most countries of the region have very good management of the economy, and that's independent of ideology. Second, we were lucky. Lucky because the dynamic behavior of China and Asia, commodity prices went up. And that has been a very important thing for the region. The consequence has been that the region has had a reasonable growth, about 5%, a reduction of poverty, substantial. Now, things have changed in the last 2 years. And of course, the growth rate of Latin America has gone down from that 4 or 5 to levels that, if you exclude the 2 cases in which we have difficulties now, that is Venezuela and Brazil, growth is, instead of being 4 or 5, it's in the other country about 2.5 to 3. The hope is that in the next years we'll restore growth, and we have to move to again to rates of growth of 4 to 5%. But that's easy to say, but difficult to do. So my question, your question, can be answered with one word. We are in a point of inflection. We have to transit from a traditional model of comparative advantage in which commodities are the fundamental engine of growth with no value added to competitive advantage, which means that we have to give value added, we have to improve the quality of infrastructure, the quality of technology, the quality of human resources, and try to attract direct foreign investment that will be also directed to change of production and trade in the world.
President Garcia, thank you so much for
your time. It was a pleasure indeed. Thank you very much.